beginning on Saturday morning. Also, it is a reunion, and if my math is right, a 50th reunion of the 1976 team. And here to talk about that is our good friend Maxey Parrish. And Maxey, it is very nice to see you and have you with us this morning. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here, and we're very excited about everything going on this weekend with the 1976 Southwest Conference Indoor Championship track team.
Nice. Very good. And am I right, Coach Hart's first conference championship team?
That's right. And, you know, we had been in the hunt for several years. In fact, the year before 1975, we felt like we got a couple of bad calls from the officials. It's always good to point fingers at officials. Right. But we thought we should have won in 75, and we didn't. And we came back and really competed with a vengeance in 1976 and won Coach Hart's first championship.
Very cool, and great to have the reunion. Unfortunate and, bittersweet that Coach Hart won't be able to be there with you this weekend.
It is. We have so many fond memories of Coach Hart, and the thing that he did, he pushed us hard as athletes. He also pushed us academically. And the thing that he wanted more than anything else out of us was to go on and to get our degrees, to have successful careers, to make a contribution. And he took a lot of pride in that. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're all looking forward to getting together so we can come back and reminisce about Coach Hart, somebody that we loved and miss.
Absolutely. What a legacy he has left behind, and you guys and girls, a big part of that also. What event, Maxey, did you participate in?
Well, I participated. That's a good way to put it. Okay. I was in the 3-mile run, which today would be the equivalent of 5,000 meters. Back then we were in yards. And, I set a Baylor school record that I think is pretty significant. I set a record for the most last place finishes in the 3-mile run in Baylor history.
Lovely.
And,
congratulations.
We talk a lot about NIL today. When I was running, NIL stood for now in last.
And you knew it well, huh?
I did it well. I was consistent.
Oh man, that's funny. And you do sort of date yourself when you talk about 3,000 yards, right?
3 miles.
3 miles.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, you definitely date yourself. You talk about the mile relay and not the 4x4. Right. All the events, the 120-yard high hurdles, not 110-meter high hurdles. Yeah. Right. So it was a different day and time. In fact, when I was running, it was actually a big deal if a track meet was timed down to the 100th of a second.
Oh, wow.
We called that fully automatic timing, or FAT, to use an acronym. And it was a big deal when we got to go to a meet that was going to have FAT timing because, we knew that we'd get accurate times there as opposed to the old hand time with a guy on a stopwatch.
How about that? That's funny. That's good to reminisce about. And Coach Hart, by the way, will always be in the record books. He has the record that'll never be broken of the Baylor 100-yard dash.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah. He was a great competitor himself out of the state of Arkansas and came to Baylor and ran for Coach Jack Patterson, who went on to become the first athletic director that hired me in the sports information office back in 1980. And he was a great competitor, and you could see that competitiveness in the way that he coached. He was a guy that wanted to win, and he instilled that in us, that competitive spirit.
Tremendous. Yep. Great reminiscing there of Coach Hart. And again, what a legacy he has left behind. How many men and women will you have coming back for this 50th reunion this weekend?
Well, the last time I talked to Kendall Bakken in the B Association, it was right at 50. And wow. Of course, that includes family and some friends and supporters. But I think that's a really good number to have after all these years because, unfortunately, we've lost a few over the years.
Yeah. And I say men and women, I guess in 76, there weren't any scholarships given to females in track. Is that right?
No. The only one was Susie Snyder, Susie Snyder Eppers,
Right.
played basketball and threw the discus in track. And she was a great discus thrower, maybe a better discus thrower than basketball player. And she was the first really good big inside player in women's college basketball history. But Susie was on scholarship, but that was kind of an anomaly because she was a two-sport person. But basically, just to kind of put it honestly, there wasn't really much of a women's program, if at all.
Right. And she was from Robinson High School.
That's right. Yeah.
Great tie there. So what do y'all have planned? What's the schedule getting this group together this weekend?
Well, we're going to meet at the Michael Johnson Invitational for a lunch provided by the Bee Association. And then we'll sit together at the track meet and at some point be recognized. And then Saturday night, we're going to have a dinner at the Brazos Landing.
Oh,
and we're very much looking forward to that.
Very cool. That'll be fun. What do you remember? So you've got good perspective as a runner for track and field, and then working in sports information for 21 years, right? 1980 to 2001, and then the campus after that. But what about the changes in the sport and the way it was covered, and just overall changes in track and field you've seen through all those years?
Well, it's been pretty astounding when you look back. A half a century sounds like, ages ago, but really it's not that long. I mentioned automatic timing. Now that's just a given. Everything is automatic timed. The tracks have changed. We started running on crushed cinders, kind of like you'd see in a landscape setting today. But we ran on crushed cinders with big, long spikes. Today, of course, it's kind of a rubberized surface that's much, much faster and easier on the legs. A big change, I think, and maybe the biggest, of course, I talked earlier about going from yards to meters. That's certainly a change. But I think probably the biggest change, we've had the addition of women's track and field, and that, of course, is a very, very successful program. And then one other thing I'd have to mention is that when I was running, it truly was a team sport, and we wanted to win individual track meets as a team. Today, it's really focused on individual performances, and that's just the nature of the beast. But they have the NCAA structure with the regionals and then the national championships. And so athletes are geared up toward qualifying and getting to go to the NCAA meets. Back in our day, it was really not so much about that as it was at going and winning the Texas A&M Invitational, or there used to be a really big meet that got thousands and thousands in attendance called the Preachers Meet. And that was Baylor, SMU, and TCU, a triangular meet. And they had a big board, and they kept points. And we wanted to beat TCU and SMU. And today, there's not even a thought given to, well, our team did better than your team. It's my individuals did better than your individuals. And that's been a huge change. And that was really a catalyst to our 1976 championship. We wanted to beat Texas. I mean, it was something that was palpable. And, when we realized that we had the ingredients, we came together as a team. I remember doing my 3-mile workouts, and Michael Carter, who won the 600-yard dash at that indoor championship meet and was a great All-American on one of Baylor's first relays, Michael would be out there cheering on the distance runners.
Nice.
Because he knew that if we could grab a point or two, that would give him a team championship. And I think that's probably one of the biggest changes of all, is that we've gone from a team orientation to an individual orientation, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a major change that's taken place.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't really think about that, but now they go to meets, even the Michael Johnson Invitational. There's not going to be a team winner out of that this weekend. I mean, it's all just the individual events. You have winners in those. So that's a great point. It's a big change through the years.
Yeah, it is, and everything has changed. NIL, of course, is totally changed the face of college athletics. I mean, we used to get real excited on the day they issued us new jock straps, and we've got athletes now, earning millions of dollars, and that's just something that was completely unheard of back in the day.
That's a big change for sure. From running to athletic communications, which was sports information at the time, and you headed up that department so well for so many years. How about the
Thank you.
changes now in that area compared to when you were running that department?
Well, I think the changes have been, kind of similar to what's going on in track. There've been a lot of them. We used to do news releases on paper. We'd go in every Sunday after church, and we would do the press release for football, and that would take a few hours to produce. And then we would literally turn on a printing press right there in the little cubby hole at back then Baylor Stadium, not Floyd
Yeah.
Casey.
Yeah.
And we would print those things, paper. We'd collate them, we'd fold them, we'd stuff them in envelopes, we'd put postage on them, and maybe by 9 or 10 o'clock that night, we'd get them down to the newspaper. The post office to be mailed to the newspapers around the country. And of course, today everything's done electronically. You can type up a release and go click, and it's out there to thousands of people,
Yeah.
and that's a big advancement. And then, of course, after that came the internet, and I actually created the very first website for Baylor Athletics. I remember
Oh,
I
nice.
went to a Big 12 meeting, and I believe it was 1997, and somebody from the University of Missouri spoke, and they talked about this thing called the internet.
Huh.
And they said, it's like you can have your own newspaper, you can stream audio, you can someday we'll do video as we're doing now.
Yeah.
And so I thought, gee, we should do that. And I remember sitting on the airplane. I believe we were in Kansas City, and I was flying home, and I got the napkin on the airplane, and I wrote out, well, what should we have? Well, we should have Baylor athletics. We should have tickets. We had football, basketball, and I just literally created that thing on the back of a napkin. And then we came home, and nobody knew how to do it. The IT people had kind of heard of it and aware of it, but really nothing was going on at that time. And so we had to go to Dallas to find somebody who knew how to write code and create a website for us.
How about
And it
that?
was literally written in HTML code.
Yeah.
So that was a big change. And then, of course, now social media is such a big driver of everything that's going on. And it's just a great way to get more information out to more people. And so I think these steps have been all very positive for college athletics. Of course, there's always going to be a downside to something. Somebody's going to misuse something in some ways. But I think by and large, when you're talking about the internet and social media, it's just great to see more and more access to information. And I think the fans like it.
Yeah. That's great. That's great to hear your perspective on the history there and the advances and all of those things, all for the better. But you guys, y'all did a great job working
Thank
with
you.
what you had. Remember the Grant Taft press conferences on Mondays, and
Yeah.
you the opposing coach on a speakerphone. Remember
Oh
that?
yeah. Oh yeah.
And that
Yeah,
was
we would.
you
Yeah,
got to
we
talk
would
to the
we would
opposing-
dial up the speakerphone and hope the line didn't go dead, and that was always so much fun because you really felt like you got to know the other coach.
Yeah.
I remember Spike Dykes. Golly, what a great guy.
Exactly.
He would come on and be so funny and engaging, and then when you would see Spike at the conference meetings, he would know you and he'd want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Lou Holtz was always great. Jackie Sherrill, Jackie was Jackie. But so many of them were so great to work with in that regard. And I think it really helped to galvanize the conference really is more of a community and family. Of course, geographically, we were in close proximity to everybody. But, just that we were communicating on that kind of level, I think was really something pretty special.
Yeah, terrific. Well, thanks for being with us this morning. Y'all have fun this weekend. That'll be fun. Is Ricky going to be there, Ricky Thompson?
Yes, yeah, Ricky is planning on being there.
Good.
And I
good.
look forward to seeing Ricky. I see Ricky a lot, obviously through Baylor events and football and whatnot. But there's a bunch of guys that I have not seen in 50 years. And we've kept up with, the great thing about email and social media and whatnot. But it's going to be so good to see people that I haven't seen in so long. I hope they recognize me because I've put on a pound or two since my 3-mile running days.
We all have, and a little grayer up top also.
Well,
Man,
gray and missing.
yeah. Man, it's great to visit with you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank
Y'all
you.
have fun this weekend. Thanks, Maxey.
Thank you, John. It's always
All
good
right.
to visit.